and I come at you, you better not duck me, son. You better not duck me, son. I'm telling you.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So, a long time ago, I reported that the WBC had ordered Gennady Golovkin to basically face Jermall Charlo in a title eliminator to get a third bout with Canelo Alvarez. And Gennady Golovkin, to no one's surprise, he refused to fight Jermall Charlo to get a third bout with Canelo Alvarez. Then you have Canelo Alvarez, who is now the WBC middleweight champion. He has other belts as well, but the reason why I mentioned the WBC belt is because Jermall Charlo is his mandatory. And Canelo, he sees Charlo as being such a dangerous opponent that he would rather move up and wait and fight Rocky Fielding at 168 as opposed to defending his title against his mandatory Jermall Charlo. Then you have Danny Jacobs, who just recently came off of a close decision win over Sergey Derevyanchenko, coincidentally another opponent that Gennady Golovkin ducked. Golovkin, he thought that Sergey was so dangerous that he was willing to give up his IBF belt not to face Sergey Derevyanchenko. And instead of keeping his belt and facing Sergey, he decided to fight Vanes Martirosyan, a fighter who had never fought at middleweight, who had been inactive for 2 years, and was coming off of a loss. So Danny Jacobs, he defeats Sergey Derevyanchenko, and I just made a video a couple days ago of what Danny Jacobs said about Jermall Charlo. If you guys haven't seen that video, I'll put the link in the description box. But Danny Jacobs, he said that he doesn't believe that Jermall Charlo wants to fight him. He basically said that ever since he confronted Jermall Charlo in New York, Jermall hasn't really been saying anything about him. But more recently, Jermall Charlo's trainer, he just spoke on the situation. And he says that Canelo, Golovkin, and Danny Jacobs are all ducking Jermall Charlo. Matter of fact, let me go and quote exactly what trainer Ronnie had to say. Quote, Canelo Alvarez is afraid of Jermall. Triple G is afraid of Jermall. And Danny Jacobs is doing all of this talking, but Danny Jacobs is afraid of him too. They see that Jermall is a big, strong, skilled fighter who takes a good shot, and that he's always in good condition, ready to fight. That's something they're afraid of. Jermall is one hell of a fighter and one tough fight for anybody that's walking around on the planet right now. And it's as simple as that. The first thing I want to say is, you know, it's funny how every once in a while you'll hear a fighter say, no fighter is afraid of anyone. No fighter is scared. It takes balls to get in the ring, etc., etc., etc. And yet you hear a trainer, a very experienced former fighter and trainer, Ronnie Shields, counter that argument. You guys don't understand. When it comes to being afraid of someone, when it comes to avoiding someone, being scared, or whatever word you want to use, you have to understand everyone in the world has some type of fear. Whether it's losing money in your bank account, whether it's taking a loss, whether it's being embarrassed, whether it's being dropped from a promotional company, etc., etc., etc. No one is questioning a person being afraid to get punched, being afraid to deal with the pain in the ring. No, it goes far beyond that. It is what is at stake if you take an L at this stage of your career. So you will be a fool to believe that these fighters, or anyone at that matter, doesn't have some form of fear instilled in them. I mean, you could be the toughest man in the world and have one of the best jobs in the world. Matter of fact, this job is so great that you know that if you ever lose that job, you will never get another opportunity like that. That would worry anyone because you have so much to lose in a situation like that. With that being said, there's no doubt about it, Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin, they are worried about facing Jermall Charlo. When it comes to Danny Jacobs, I don't really know yet because we're hearing two sides of the story when it comes to them. You have Danny Jacobs on one side, he's saying that Jermall is afraid. Or at least he said that he doesn't think that Jermall will take the fight. Now you have Charlo's trainer, he's saying that Danny Jacobs is afraid. Once again, the difference from a Danny Jacobs versus a Canelo Alvarez or a Gennady Golovkin is Canelo Alvarez, Jermall Charlo is Canelo's mandatory opponent. When it comes to Gennady Golovkin, Golovkin was ordered to face Jermall Charlo. So when it comes to Danny Jacobs, he's not in that situation, and he's saying not only did he confront Jermall Charlo in New York, but he's saying he doesn't think that Jermall Charlo will take the fight. So once again, we'll see how that situation plays out. But for now, like I just said a second ago, Jermall Charlo is Canelo Alvarez's mandatory. So by order, that's the fight that needs to take place next. Since Gennady Golovkin just opted out of fighting Jermall Charlo in a title eliminator bout. You know, I hear Canelo fans or Gennady Golovkin fans, they'll sit here and they'll say that Charlo hasn't done anything, he fights bums, he's overrated, etc., etc., etc. If that is the case, you guys are putting more pressure on Golovkin and Canelo to take the Charlo fight. Because if he's overrated, if he doesn't deserve the credit that he's getting, then you would think that Canelo and Golovkin would want to be the first people to get in the ring and take away their undefeated record and expose them, right? Because the actions that we're seeing from Canelo and Gennady Golovkin, it contradicts what the fans are saying. It's almost as if Canelo and Golovkin, they're saying to them same fans like, hey, you need to speak for yourself. This Charlo guy is dangerous. I'm not getting in the ring with him right now. Canelo is like, let me move up. I'd rather move up and wait than face that dangerous guy, right? Gennady Golovkin is like, I'd rather face someone much easier than face Charlo. Once again, think about this. Let's once again reverse the roles. Imagine if Jermall Charlo was the middleweight champion of the world and an opponent like Canelo Alvarez or even Gennady Golovkin was his mandatory. Do you think Jermall Charlo would be avoiding a Canelo Alvarez or a Gennady Golovkin? Of course not. Imagine if Terrence Crawford, imagine if Andre Ward, imagine if Floyd Mayweather was the middleweight champion of the world and Canelo or Gennady Golovkin was their mandatory. Do you think any of those fighters would turn down a fight against Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez? Do you think any of those fighters I just named would give up one of their belts and fight Avanis Monterosian instead? You guys know it wouldn't happen. So what does it suggest? It suggests that there are levels to talent. It suggests that those fighters that I just mentioned have far more confidence than a fighter like Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez does at this point. So fans that are defending Canelo and Golovkin, saying Charlo is this and he's that, he's not that good, he's overrated, etc., 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 you can say whatever you want to say. But if the guy that you're defending is not echoing the same thing that you're saying, then guess what? He doesn't even agree with you. You know, I said this before and I'll say it again. You have a lot of fans out there defending Gennady Golovkin by saying that, oh, he's too old to be fighting someone like a Jermall Charlo, etc., etc. But yet, these same fans, they had no problem with Golovkin fighting against Canelo Alvarez. So do you guys see what that basically suggests? That implies that they believe that Canelo Alvarez must not be on Jermall Charlo's level. Because if you believe Golovkin is not too old to fight Canelo, but he's too old to fight someone as dangerous as Jermall Charlo, once again, that contradicts some of the other decafs saying things like Jermall Charlo is overrated, he ain't really that good, and all he has done is fight bums, etc., etc., etc. That shoots that notion down completely. See, the thing is, these decafs are trapped just like these fighters are trapped. No matter what you say, because you're not speaking the truth and you're saying everything is based on emotion. Everything is based on emotion and pride. And what happens when you continue to say things that aren't true is you have to eventually keep making up lies to cover up other lies. And then you end up running into contradiction after contradiction. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Because if the argument is Gennady Golovkin is too old to be facing the best competition, then we should not be taking him serious at all. He should not be in the rankings as pound for pound one of the best fighters. He should be looked at as some senior citizen that should not be taken serious anymore, right? He's just basically having exhibition bouts until he retires completely. So there's no way you can say that Gennady Golovkin is too old for Jermall Charlo, but he's not too old for Canelo Alvarez, unless you're saying you believe that Canelo Alvarez is extremely overrated. So at the end of the day, neither Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin have a legitimate excuse to duck or avoid Jermall Charlo. But when it comes to Canelo Alvarez, he has even less excuses because Canelo Alvarez is younger. He just signed an 11-fight deal with DAZN. So there's no reason for him not to fight against the monster Jermall Charlo. And once again, the reason why I call him the monster is because these fighters like Canelo and Golovkin, they are treating Charlo like he's a monster, like he's the boogeyman. Because we all know you can't use the excuse that Charlo hasn't fought anyone. Because Golovkin, he fought Willie Monroe. Willie Monroe hadn't beat anyone, if that's what you want to use as an excuse. When he fought against Dominic Wade hadn't fought anyone. So how come you guys didn't criticize Golovkin for facing Willie Monroe? How come you guys didn't say, oh, Golovkin ain't nothing but a cherry picker. Why is he fighting someone who ain't never fought no one? You see how you contradict yourself, guys? So anyway, man, we'll see what happens. I mean, Golovkin is in a terrible situation because he tried to avoid Charlo and he wanted to fight Murata instead. Murata ended up losing to Rob Brandt. So now it'll be really interesting to see where Golovkin goes from this point on. Canelo Alvarez is facing Rocky Fielding, and there were even talks that he may stay at 168, which sounds crazy. There's no doubt about it. Once again, with an 11-fight deal, Canelo is going to have to fight some of the best fighters at middleweight or 168, wherever he decides to stay. So let's see what happens. I truly believe that we will definitely get Charlo versus Danny Jacobs if they continue to win. It'll happen just like we got Jermall Charlo versus Julian J. Rock Williams. People said that Charlo was ducking J. Rock Williams, and eventually they end up fighting, and we know what happened. So let's see what happens. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.